Okay, what if I told you an AI could run a multi-billion-dollar company? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But here's the thing. This isn't some far-off prediction. It's happening right now, today. So we're going to break down how AI is already moving into the boardroom and what that really means for, well, for all of us.
All right, let's just dive right in, because this isn't some slow, gradual change. This is a full-on acceleration. Think about it. The first official AI board member, an algorithm called Vital, that was back in 2014. Just 2 years after that, boom, a publicly traded company puts an AI named Alicia T into a management role. And then just last year, a humanoid robot, Mika, gets named CEO. I mean, this is all happening way faster than even the experts at the World Economic Forum thought it would back in 2015.
So, this all leads to the obvious question, right? What does an AI director or CEO, do? Are we picturing a robot sitting at the head of a long mahogany table voting on motions? Well, the reality is way more complex and honestly a lot more fascinating than that. And to really get at that answer, we've got to look at how companies are actually doing this. It turns out there are two really distinct paths they're taking to bring AI into the highest levels of decision-making. And they're not necessarily separate, but they do represent two completely different ways of thinking about automation.
So here are those two paths laid out. On one side, you've got the digital command center. The best way to think about this is like a single, all-seeing eye, an AI that has a complete, real-time picture of the entire company. Then, on the other side, you have companies building these super specialized AI tools. An AI that does one thing really well, like picking board members. The long-term idea there is that you could eventually stitch all these different expert AIs together to create a kind of fused digital board.
Now, if you really want to wrap your head around the sheer scale of one of these digital command centers, just look at this number, 10 million. That's how many sensors are feeding real-time data into a system called Panorama, used by the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC. Just try to imagine that. 10 million data points coming in constantly from all over the world. There is just no way any team of humans could ever process that.
And what do you get from all that data? Well, the results are staggering. Panorama isn't just a giant data bucket. It pulls together info from dozens of different companies, uses AI to spit out instant recommendations, and it's overseeing a massive operation worth over $60 billion. This thing is the real deal. It delivers on that huge promise of AI governance. You get radical transparency, you slash costs, and you have a level of real-time insight that was frankly impossible until now.
But, and this is a huge but, with all of this incredible power comes a really fundamental, almost philosophical problem. Seriously, it's a hurdle so big it could stop this entire AI revolution in its tracks. And it's called the black box problem.
Okay, so what is this black box? Well, with a lot of the most powerful AIs we have today, we can see the data we put in, and we can see the decision that comes out the other end. But the part in the middle, the why, the how it connected point A to point B, that's often a total mystery. Its internal logic is a black box, completely hidden from us. And that's a huge problem. I mean, if you don't know why a decision was made, how can you ever be sure it was fair, or legal, or even ethical?
This is such a big deal, in fact, that governments are already getting involved. Take the European Union. They've established something called the right to explanation. Basically, it's a law that says if an automated system makes a big decision about you, let's say it denies you a loan, you have a legal right to know why. And you can see how that directly clashes with the whole idea of a black box AI, right? And here's where it gets really tricky. That black box can easily hide bias. You see, bad outcomes can sneak in at pretty much any stage. The data you feed it in the first place could be biased. Or the model could learn to copy existing human biases during its training. Or the bias could be baked right into the code from the start. Any one of those things can lead to really unfair, discriminatory results that are almost impossible to trace back to the source. So we've got this standoff, right? The AI's logic is a black box, but the law demands we see inside. So what do? Well, some researchers are proposing a really clever workaround. Instead of trying to force the black box open, the idea is to build a very specific, very transparent little world for the AI to live and work inside.
The fancy term for this is a dedicated operational context. But here's what it means in simple terms. First, you don't just let the AI run wild. You define its sandbox, its specific area of operation. Step 2, and this is the really brilliant part, you create two parallel sets of rules, one for humans, written in plain English, and one for the AI, written in a language it understands, pure data and metrics. And then step 3, The AI can only make decisions that fall strictly within that machine-readable rulebook. No exceptions.
And here's a great example of how that works. The rule for humans might be something based on principles, right? Like, ensure fair treatment of all shareholders. That's qualitative, it requires human judgment. But the parallel rule for the AI? It's all numbers. Something like, maintain risk distribution within these exact statistical parameters. So one is for people to interpret, the other is for the machine to just execute. And by doing this, the AI's actions are always explainable. You can just point to the rulebook.
Okay, so let's say companies crack this black box problem. What happens next? Where does this all lead? Well, the answer could be something truly transformative, and maybe a little bit scary. It's a concept that people are starting to call the corporate singularity.
So you've probably heard of the technological singularity, right? The idea that an AI gets so smart, it can build an even smarter AI, which builds an even smarter one, and you get this runaway intelligence explosion. Well, the corporate version is kind of like that. Imagine a company that totally perfects AI management. It becomes so hyper-efficient, so profitable, that it can pour all those resources into building an even better management AI. It creates this feedback loop, giving it a competitive advantage that's basically unstoppable. Human-run companies just wouldn't be able to keep up.
And what's really fascinating here is if you think back to those two paths of AI we talked about earlier, they almost seem to mirror our own human leadership styles. You have the digital command center, that big all-seeing system like Panorama. That's kind of like a board of directors, right? Collective intelligence. And then you have the individual android like CEO Mika, which is much more like a single, focused CEO. So the big question for the future is, which one wins out?
And this really brings us to the final and maybe the most important thought here. As we build these incredibly powerful new, entities, we're forced to hold up a mirror to ourselves. When the robot Sophia was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, it sparked exactly this kind of debate. This isn't just a tech challenge anymore. It's a deeply social and ethical one. It's forcing us to ask really hard questions about fairness, about rights, about what it even means to be human. So the real question isn't just what rules we'll write for the machines, it's what those rules are ultimately going to say about us.